Okay, just to announce that we do have counselors. We've got counselors set up for each meeting. We appreciate that. There could be some with disclosure, and there could be a need for supports. And we have a counselor here, Melanie Johnson, who's prepared to assist anyone who needs to have support when they give their disclosure or want to give their presentation.
My name is Melanie Johnson. I work at the hospital as an Aboriginal patient liaison worker. Lived in Kitsumkalum for 27 years now. I'm speaking on behalf of Michelle Gurney, one of the missing women on the east side of Vancouver. Michelle Gurney was born in 1969. She was missing December 1998 in Vancouver East Side, Portland Hotel. Michelle was my sister's daughter. My sister Benita died in 2001. Since she's been missing, we've had different contact with the RCMP, with the Commission, with different groups. Missing women, many nations, women and men, different ages. They belong to families, tribes. They're nieces, mothers, sisters, cousins, and friends. We think of them when we have birthdays, weddings, funerals, births. Michelle's brother, his wife had just given birth to twins. One was named Benita after my sister, and one was named Michelle after his missing sister. The last contact I had with Michelle was a phone. She phoned me from a ranch in Kamloops. The RCMP, I gave them my phone bill. And when I spoke to Michelle, I said, "Who brought you there?" And she said, "My friends." I said, "Well, what are their names?" She said, "I don't know." "Well, what are you doing there?" She said, "I don't know why they brought me here." I said, "Where are you?" She said, "Kamloops. I'm in a ranch." And I gave the phone bill to the RCMP and I had no response. Did they follow up with it? I didn't get the phone bill back. It really bugs me every time I get a phone bill now. I actually had her on the phone at one time. I was probably the last person here for me. When the RCMP came to do DNA samples, they told us that Picton had a mass grave with 10 to 13 women, and he couldn't remember who was in the grave. Can you imagine how that bothers us? We get phone calls every time on the news, they find another body, find another foot. We're constantly wondering, oh my God, I wonder if this is it. And I truly believe the life of our girls and our women is worth more than 10 minutes. The backbone of the missing women is just part of their life struggle and tragedy. Who they are as part of their past, present, now and future is in the hands of people who have no person in their family murdered or missing, who have no idea how this feels or what the families go through, to walk among their moccasins. Our families, the missing murdered women, have encountered many people. In August, there was a group of people from Skilliot. They were called the Healing Bears. They were here to celebrate the highlight of tears and to give honor to the women who were missing. They went all the way to Prince George. CFNR actually taped it. They named all the women from Highway 16 that were missing, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. Missing Women's Inquiry is women of many cultures, backgrounds, and ages. When the Picton farm started finding people on TV, we were told not to watch it when different things were aired, like the trailer smeared with blood, and it was really graphic. Or when they found DNA in one of the pigs. I couldn't eat pork chops or bacon for a long time. It's really disturbing. We received questions and issues for discussion. What can you tell us about the vulnerability of missing women in BC and other women who are at risk? It's a life struggle. Being Aboriginal is being very challenged. The number one challenge is being Aboriginal yourself. How can police take vulnerability into account to assist in further crimes of this type? Remember that these people that are missing are someone's niece, someone's daughter, someone's sister, somebody's mother. They have families they're connected to. How can police take the vulnerability into account in their investigations of missing women? These women and men have a past, present, and future. And the future is now in hands of people who have nobody missing. They have no idea what it's like to walk in these moccasins of grief. What can I tell you about the experience with the police? I have a phone bill, I got a phone call. I'd like to know how often they do DNA samples. Because when they did samples for my nephew, who was matched to Michelle, it was 6 years ago, and I haven't heard anything from them since. Progress has been made in implementing recommendations. That's what we're doing now. We're doing an inquiry. And I want to know, are you still looking for her? We wonder every day when they find a foot, find a body, is it her? We don't know. Are you still looking for her, or are you waiting for the body to turn up? The officer that came to do the DNA said they're offering $500 for a service. We're Aboriginal people, we don't just give up and walk away. We haven't done that, we're waiting. You know, in God we trust, and that's exactly wherever she is right now. So it's really difficult to do this, but it's important that they hear from the families. The missing women from the Vancouver East Side, they need to be taken into account that they're family members. They're still loved by people whose family they come from. Michelle had a son. Her mother died a year before she did, before she went missing. And when my sister knew that she wasn't going to last, she said, what I'm going to do is when I get to the other side, I'll tell you where Michelle is if she's over here. And can you imagine hearing something like that? It's very disturbing. But the victim farm thing, I don't know how this fits into it, but it fits into it somewhere. Because is my Michelle a missing woman or is she a murdered woman? We don't really know. We'll probably never know. But I thank you for doing this inquiry, and probably that's all I'm going to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Some of our lawyers who happen to be traveling from court to okay, that's my client, and I pull over and, pick them up. So there is a need for cheap transportation between Terrace and Rupert. Recently, between Kitsumkalum and Terrace, there is the city bus, which is used quite a bit, and that's at low cost. The biggest factor in missing people is Highway 16. Since I've lived here, I've known 4 or 5 people who've gone missing, and that's from between Prince George to Prince Rupert. I did know Michelle Gurney. I went to school with her. She was a friend of mine. She had stayed at my house when we were in grade school. My husband's cousin's daughter is missing, and that's still an open sore. You could see her looking at people's faces, wondering if she's going to show up. So what I encourage is more information sharing between rural police any reports to be taken more seriously, some sort of Amber Alert system, and to use the resources that are out there. The Native communities, you know, as soon as you ask for help, they'll be right there. There's no waiting, there's no lack of response. And for emergency transport to possibly include the transition house societies. There's transition houses all along the Highway 16. I believe that's all I have to say. Thank you for being here and for listening to us, and hopefully we'll all come to a good resolve and have a good end result.
Thank you very much. My name is Robin Austin. I'm the MLA in Skeena. This constituency covers the territory of the Nass Valley, starting with Kalum and going to Inash, then down through here, through Kitsumkalum, city of Terrace, and down to Kitsumkalum and the Heisler community on the other side of the Douglas Channel. I've been the MLA for 6 years doing this job, but I want to speak for a few minutes about things that happened that I have observed long before I went into public life. I'll start by just saying that a couple of days ago I was in the car driving a young Aboriginal woman, giving her a lift somewhere, and the radio had the news on, and they were talking about the young boy who had been abducted from his home in Sparwood. And the news story was a good news story because he was delivered back to his home safely. And this young woman, who was First Nations, turned to me and said, "Wow, I guess that Amber Alert worked and he's safe because he's white." And I thought for a second and was really shocked that somebody as young could even think and say something like that. But I think that anecdote tells you a little bit of the kinds of feelings that First Nations people feel, rightly or wrongly, about the issues of safety and about how people are treated in a country that proclaims to have a justice system that works for everybody. I think clearly the missing women who were murdered down in the Lower Mainland and the numerous women who have gone missing on Highway 16, and the fact that it took so long to find the perpetrator in the Lower Mainland, and we are still looking for a perpetrator or multiple perpetrators. We don't know what's happened up here. And the fact that in both cases the victims were largely marginalized people in our society tells you that there's something wrong. That maybe had they been wealthy white folk from North Vancouver, white women who came from families with power and influence, that maybe Robert Picton would have been up much quicker than he was. And I think that's very sad that we have to sit here and question our justice system as to how well it takes care of all of its citizens. A few years before I became MLA, I worked in the social work field, and I worked with a young man who had a mental cognitive disability. And I used to take him out and do landscaping here in town with a company called Provincial Networking Group. And like many people with a cognitive disability, he was shy, and he wasn't nonverbal, but he didn't speak a great deal. And one day we were out and we were mowing lawns, and he started to tell me about where he grew up and how he grew up. And he started to cry. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And he went on to tell me the story of how his younger sister, who was about 23 or 24 years old, living on reserve around Burns Lake, got on the highway to hitchhike and was never seen again. And that was my first real personal interaction with women who had gone missing on Highway 16. Coming from this young fellow who, like I say, was very closed and not forthcoming, and certainly scared to talk. He didn't have a lot of confidence. But he was willing to share that story with me, of how it hurt him. He had 5 or 6 siblings, and the loss of his sister was something that profoundly affected his life. And at that time, of course, we didn't even have an inquiry up here looking into the missing women on Highway 16. That came about subsequently to this young man's revelations to me. And then I also got connected through Tom Chipman, who I met many years ago. I remember meeting Tamara Chipman when she was still a kid, living with her dad, Tom. And then, of course, many years later, hearing the story of how she got a ride from Prince Rupert here to Terrace and never made it here. So when you have connections firsthand with people who have lost loved ones, it is extremely emotional. It's extremely sad. We need to do something about it. I'm glad that these hearings are taking place. It is important. I think that the government should have funded everybody and all the legal teams that work with the families down in the Lower Mainland. There doesn't seem to be a point in having an inquiry and spending the money to go through that process and then not fund the advocates and the lawyers who come to represent the families who've lost loved ones. And I don't think it's enough for a government to say, well, money's tight. We spent $560 million putting a new roof on BC Place, right? If we could spend that kind of money for a sports stadium, then we can spend the few million that's required to get to the root and the causes at the bottom of why it took so long to catch Robert Victon and why it is taking so long to find out what's really happening here in northern BC on Highway 16. I think it's sad that any segment of our society should live in fear from walking on the streets. It's wrong. And I'm sure, this room here has got almost equal males and females, and I have a son and I have a daughter. And it's a fact of life. I'm sure for most parents, we worry more about our daughters than we do about our sons. Why is that? Shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. We should feel safe no matter what gender we have. And we should feel that when something goes wrong, that we have a system in place, a justice system, a sheriff system, a police system that's there to help us. And finally, I just want to make one comment about the gentleman sitting to the left of me. I think Justice Opal has taken a lot of criticism in regards to these hearings, but I want to say this, that I think that it was right for him to speak up and ask the government, which he used to be a member of, by the way. It's always hard to criticize a team that you were part of. But I think it's important to recognize that he went to the government that he was a part of and said, you need to fund the advocates. And I applaud him for that. I also want to say that it's always hard to criticize your own. And long before Justice Opal did all the things he's done in public life, and long before he went into politics, he also pointed out in his own community, the East Indian community, which has had a lot of problems with violence against women. And he stood up there and pointed that out. And it's always hard to take a mirror and point it at your own community and say, we have a problem here. And to say that publicly. We say things privately, and that's easy. But to say it publicly is difficult. So I applaud him for speaking out on these issues, for having the integrity to understand his role when he took on this role. And I hope that there is a positive outcome here. I hope that at some point we actually find out what's going on this highway, and we put about in place measures that create safety right across this country for marginalized people who don't have access to cars and all the pleasures of privilege and need to get transportation from one community to another. Finally, I just want to say this. In remote parts of BC, like northern BC, where families are spread out, and we all know that the culture of First Nations is that they have lots of friends and relatives and cousins living in communities far away here. People are always traveling to see one another. And we don't have great transportation links up here. And it's expensive. And so being able to get a ride from a family or a friend, or being able to hitch a ride should be a normal practice. We should feel safe doing it. And I hope that one day we can reach that point. Thank you very much.
I work for Promoting Friendship Society. I'd like to acknowledge the territory, thank them for hosting this meeting here today. I come from the Highsville First Nation. I've worked for Promoting Friendship Society for about 3 years. I run the Aboriginal Early Childhood Development Program and the Aboriginal Infant Development Program. A few things that I would like to say is based around the lack of programs that there are for our young women, our young families in general, at the Friendship Center levels. We host programs such as the ones that I mentioned. We have Aboriginal Child and Youth Mental Health Program, the CDBC program, which is Complex Developmental Behavioral Conditions, Aboriginal Head Start, and Family Skills. When an Aboriginal person is in crisis, the first place that they come to, or the first person they're looking for, is one of their own. Somebody who will accept them, somebody who will not judge them. We have so many people coming through to our locations. We have 3 locations in Terrace looking for help, and we help them the best that we can. We have staff that will go above and beyond to do whatever they can do to help this individual. But really, there is no money for funding for young parents or for young ladies. Most of our funding is for 0 to 6, or our programs are meant for people who have their children apprehended, and then they have to get referred. We have one program that is managed by Lisa Lawley. It's called the Circle of Life program, and that is the one program that a lot of young girls and women fit into. If the woman is in their childbearing years and they are drinking, Lisa and her mentors can reach out to them and help them if they are willing to accept the help. And they help that young lady for up to 3 years in harm reduction. One of the other points that I wanted to raise is the city bus that we have here in Terrace, for example. Kitsumkalum, Kitsumkalum, and Kitsumkalum Village all work together at getting the bus to come to their communities, to service their communities, which was wonderful. It's great that it's finally happening. But the thing is if you're a person that has a job and you work till 5, and you live in Kitsumkalum, out in Githouse, you have no way home because the last bus leaves at 4:30. So you're still out on the road hitchhiking. You're not a drunk, you're not an addict, you're not homeless, you're just trying to get to your home after work, and you have no transportation. I disagree with the stereotype that these women are addicts or prostitutes or that our children have mental health issues. Some of these people are just simply trying to get to where they belong. They want to get home or a place where they feel secure, and hitchhiking is the only way that they have to do it. Maybe they're fleeing abuse. Maybe that they're trying to just get home from work. I've heard of women that live in more remote communities that have physically harmed themselves to get medevac out because they're in abusive relationships. And the other concern that I have is that many people have information on these missing women, but they're being threatened. There are so many circumstances that we've heard that if somebody says something, their house is going to get burned, or they're going to end up exactly where the deceased or missing person is. These people are afraid to come forward. They have no reason to feel secure. They have no reason to feel that anybody's going to protect them. One other concern that I have for the community at large in Terrace is the lack of counseling. It's not that we don't have qualified services, it's that everybody has a wait list. For children that need to go to mental health, there's a wait list. For people that need A&D counseling, there's a wait list. And the programs are getting cut. So our people are not able to access the programs when they are reaching out for help. So I think that we need more funding across, not just in Aboriginal communities, but the city services as well to try and help people that are reaching out. Thank you.
Our concern is that there were women going missing before that, and that there were issues going on before that. And for some reason, the government has made the decision to do this very limited time period. The third concern that we have is that there should be a full and separate public inquiry on the highway of tears. This is where all of the documentation is available to people who are interested, that they can participate, that they can testify, that they can be cross-examined in terms of people who made decisions about to investigate or not investigate, and that it should be fully transparent. What we have here is useful for some things, but it is not, as Commissioner said, a full public inquiry as is going on downtown side right now. And this commission is limited in the recommendations it can make about that investigation because it's an active and ongoing investigation. So we have concerns about that as well. And finally, and I say this with the most respect possible to Commissioner Opal, we have concerns that he was a member of government at the time that a number of decisions were made, both in relation to Mr. Picton and in relation to funding programs for Aboriginal people and Aboriginal women. And as has been mentioned, it's very difficult. He's been put in a difficult situation where he may need to criticize people that he worked with for years in his government. And we have raised the concern that could create a perception among some people, even if he's harder on people, that the reason he's doing that is to separate himself, or if he's easier on people, but he did that because he was involved in government. So we've raised that concern as well. And so these are some of the concerns about that our organization is concerned with, and that we think has led other organizations not to participate. And so I wanted to share that with you today. And the reason why I wanted to share it with you is because it may be that our organization will not participate as well. And if we don't participate, we wouldn't want you to think that the reason was because we didn't think this was an important issue, or that missing Aboriginal women shouldn't be investigated, which is simply that it's going to be very difficult. The strictures that have been put on Commissioner Opal, the situation that he's been put in by the provincial government, is going to make it very, very difficult for him to hold a fair inquiry, in our opinion. And that's, of course, just the opinion of the BC Civil Liberties Association. And I know that there's varying and different perspectives on that kind of thing. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. And again, I want to emphasize that I say that with greatest respect to the Commission and to the intentions of all the people who are here in the room. And I guess actually there is one more thing that I would like to add, just as a recommendation to the Commission. I note that, and I think it's a testament to the RCMP's interest in these proceedings, that there are a number of RCMP officers here. I know the detachment head I had the pleasure to meet at the beginning from Terrace. In my experience, people are sometimes more reluctant to come forward with information that they have in the presence of RCMP officers if that information is perceived to be critical of the RCMP. And you may wish to hold a hearing where there are not RCMP officers present. Obviously, it's a public hearing, but I found the RCMP to be very cooperative in the past when they're asked just to either step out of the hearing for a bit or to not attend, so that people can come forward and be comfortable. Because there are a number of policies that the RCMP has, that we're working with the RCMP and trying to get to change, that can create a feeling of a lack of safety for people in presenting critical information in front of active RCMP officers. So that's something the Commission might want to look at doing either future sessions or even at some point at some of the sessions later on today. And I leave that to you to talk with the RCMP about something you may think about. So thank you very much for the time. And I'm sorry to use my time to come up and criticize the Commission, but that is the position of the Association right now, the position that's being put in, frankly, by the provincial government and the decisions that they've made so far. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I would be remiss if I didn't reply to a couple of the points made by Mr. Eby, and I don't want to get into a dispute about it first about these issues, but two of the points that he raises, and I'm somewhat surprised that he would raise one of them. The first one, he said that there should be a full inquiry, a hearing commission into Highway of Tears. Well, the law is fairly clear on that point. That is, you cannot have a full hearing commission if there's an ongoing police investigation going on. It has to do with the compellability of witnesses. That's the law. You cannot, in an inquiry, we can subpoena witnesses to testify. But if there's a police investigation that's ongoing, then it is impossible to subpoena those police who are investigating ongoing crimes without compromising their investigation. So it would be wrong to have a commission of inquiry into a full commission of inquiry, a hearing commission of inquiry into the highway of tears while there's a police investigation going on. It is no mystery why the province established this commission of inquiry into policing at the time, into the inquiry of missing women after Picton's appeals were exhausted. It's because the appeals were exhausted. The justice system per se, that is the court system, no longer had any interest in it. So under our legal system, under our laws, it's not possible to do that. That's the reason for that. I'm not defending government for doing it, but that's the law. He made a point about my role as in government. Well, Mr. Eby sometimes has to do some homework on this, and I say that with the greatest of respect. I know that you're running for public office in due course, but I did the Commission of Inquiry into policing in the 1990s. It was a comprehensive Commission of Inquiry, and some of the issues that we dealt with at that time, regional policing, the sharing of information of policing, women in policing, violence against women in policing, the treatment by police of Aboriginal people were subject matters that were discussed at that time. So in many ways we are revisiting those areas of policing. So my role in the Attorney General had virtually no, and I was Attorney General from 2005 to 2009. I was a judge in the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal prior to that, and that's when I did the policing inquiry. So in many ways, what we are doing here now, the police relationship to the community, the police relationship to violence against women, and how the police investigate violence against women, the community's relationship with the police. Those are issues that we dealt with in the 90s. And in many ways, while there's been much progress made, we are re-examining some of those issues, and that's why I assumed that I was appointed to do this inquiry, because it deals with policing and not any role that I had in government. And so I do not want to turn this thing into a political inquiry, because it isn't. It has to do with very important issues, tragedies that are taking place and have nothing to do with politics. Tragedies, terrible tragedies, missing women who have failed to turn up, women who are for the most part poor, women who are disproportionately Aboriginal, people who need to have voices heard. And my track record is well known when it comes to dealing with those issues. So I just want to clarify that point. Other than that, I want to thank you for appearing here this morning.